2018 MEAC Volleyball Championship.
A parking lot night. Two women sitting in a car. One of them just got off her shift at the mall. She is tired. She is probably thinking about her graduate thesis, her next cheer practice, maybe what she is going to eat when she gets home. She has no idea what is about to happen to her. Two men walk across that parking lot toward the car. One of them is carrying a gun. Within seconds there is a struggle. A shot rings out, and the woman in the passenger seat, 22 years old, magna cum laude graduate, cheerleading captain, one of the brightest students on her campus, is slumped over with a bullet in her chest. Her name is MaKayla Bryant. And the person who drove her to that parking lot, the person she trusted with her life that night, is someone she had known for years. Someone she loved. So here is the question that is going to stay with you through this entire series. Was MaKayla's death a random act of violence? Or was she set up knowingly or not by the one person who should have protected her? By the time we get to the end of this story, you are going to have your own answer. And it might make you angrier than you expect. Welcome to Real Crime Stories. Hit that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to this channel if true crime stories like this one matter to you. So let us get into it. Florida A&M University sits on a hilltop in Tallahassee, Florida. From certain angles, you can see the whole city below. Students call it the Hill. And for generations of black scholars, athletes, artists, and leaders, getting to the top of that hill meant everything. It meant you had made it somewhere worth being. MaKayla Bryant made it there. Born with a sharp mind and a competitive spirit, she arrived at FAMU and immediately became the kind of student that professors remember long after graduation. She earned her undergraduate degree in criminal justice, not barely, not just enough to get by, but magna cum laude, with distinction, with excellence. And when the graduation ceremony ended and the cap came off, she did not walk away from the campus. She signed up for more. She enrolled in FAMU's graduate psychology program. The decision says everything about how she moved through life. Most people exhale after finishing a 4-year degree. MaKayla leaned forward. Outside the classroom, she poured herself into the cheerleading program. She eventually rose to become team captain, a role that carries far more responsibility than most outsiders realize. A captain manages personalities, mediates tension, mentors younger members, and holds the unit together during high-pressure moments. Coaches do not hand that role to just anyone. They give it to the person they trust most when things fall apart. They gave it to MaKayla. Her sorority, Delta Sigma Theta, was another home. Founded on principles of scholarship and sisterhood, the organization gave her a broader community and a deeper sense of purpose. She also served as treasurer of the Phi Sigma Theta National Honor Society, handling finances, keeping order, showing up accountable. Details that matter because they reveal a pattern. Everywhere MaKayla went, people handed her responsibility, and everywhere she went, she carried it well. Her professors saw potential that extended far beyond graduation. Her teammates saw someone worth following. Her family saw the kind of daughter and sister that makes every sacrifice feel meaningful. To the people closest to her, MaKayla was not just doing well. She was building something real. To cover her tuition and daily expenses during graduate school, she picked up part-time shifts at the Governor's Square Mall. Retail work. Long hours on your feet. The kind of job that humbles you, tires you out, and pays just enough to keep moving forward. She took it without complaint. That kind of quiet grind rarely makes headlines, but it speaks volumes about a person's character. January 26, 2022 started as an ordinary Wednesday. MaKayla went to class. She fulfilled her obligations. By evening, she was at the mall finishing up her shift, probably counting down the minutes until she could rest. Nothing about that day signaled danger. Nothing gave her reason to pause. Then Precious Charlton arrived. Charlton, 23, had been a fixture in MaKayla's personal life for years. Their relationship had moved through different phases: romantic, complicated, familiar. the kind of connection that never fully closes even during the quiet periods. When Charlton pulled up and offered a ride, MaKayla accepted without hesitation. Why would she hesitate? This was somebody she knew, somebody she had history with, somebody who felt safe. They drove together for a while, stopped to get the car cleaned, found an ice cream spot and grabbed something sweet. By every surface appearance, it looked like two former partners spending casual time together on a weeknight, relaxed, familiar, comfortable. But Charlton had an appointment scheduled for that evening that she had not mentioned to MaKayla. A transaction, $650 exchanging hands for a quarter-pound of marijuana. The buyer was a man named Khalil Ogilvie. The location was the Providence Point apartment complex on Stuckey Avenue, and as far as anyone could tell, MaKayla had no idea any of it was happening until they pulled into that parking lot. She had just been along for the ride. Two figures emerged from the shadows on the far side of the lot and moved toward the vehicle. One of them had a plan that went far beyond buying drugs. And MaKayla Bryant was directly in his path. The Providence Point apartment complex sits off Stuckey Avenue, tucked into a residential stretch of Tallahassee that most people pass without a second glance. On the surface, nothing about it demands attention. Just another cluster of buildings, just another parking lot under dim evening lighting. But on January 26, 2022, that parking lot became the last place MaKayla Bryant ever saw. Charlton pulled into the complex and parked. The exchange was supposed to be straightforward. Ogilvie would hand over the money. The product would change hands. Everyone would go their separate direction. That is how these arrangements are supposed to unfold. Quick, quiet, unremarkable. Except Khalil Ogilvie never intended to pay for anything. He and another unidentified male emerged from across the lot and approached the vehicle. Both women, according to court documents, had firearms positioned in their laps at that point, suggesting some level of awareness that a transaction of this nature carries risk. Perhaps that detail comforts some people. Perhaps it feels like preparation. But preparation and protection are two entirely separate things. And what unfolded next proved that no amount of readiness could have changed the outcome. Ogilvie moved toward the passenger side, toward MaKayla. He pulled out a handgun. This was not a drug deal anymore. This was a robbery. He demanded what they had. And in that fraction of a second, the kind that splits a life into before and after, MaKayla made a decision. She grabbed for the weapon. Whether that impulse came from survival instinct, from fear, from sheer refusal to surrender, nobody can say with certainty. But her hands went for that gun. And the two of them struggled over it, right there in the front seat of that vehicle. Charlton, recognizing the severity of what was unfolding, shifted into gear and tried to accelerate out of danger. She was attempting to flee, attempting to get them both out alive. She did not get far enough. As the vehicle began pulling away, Ogilvie fired. The bullet entered MaKayla's chest. Whatever conversation they had been having, whatever plans she was holding onto for the following morning, a class to attend, a practice to lead, an assignment to finish, all of it collapsed in that single moment. She was struck sitting in the passenger seat of a car she had climbed into less than an hour earlier, trusting the driver completely. Charlton did not freeze. Whatever complicated feelings exist about her role in the events of that evening, what she did immediately after that gunshot matters. She drove, fast, directly to Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare, no hesitation about the destination. She got MaKayla to the emergency entrance and the medical team took over. Surgeons worked on her, they fought for her, but the damage was too severe. MaKayla Bryant was pronounced dead that night on the operating table, 22 years old. A graduate student, a captain, a daughter, a sister, gone within hours of finishing an ordinary shift at a shopping mall. News spread across the FAMU campus before sunrise. By morning, students were gathering. Grief moved through the hilltop community fast and heavy, the kind that hits differently when the person being mourned was someone you saw every single day. Vigils formed, Flowers appeared. Her sorority sisters gathered. Her cheer teammates held each other. FAMU had lost one of its own in the most senseless possible way. Law enforcement moved quickly. The Tallahassee Police Department launched an investigation, and within days, 2 arrests had been made. Precious Charlton, the woman behind the wheel, was taken into custody first and charged with degree felony murder alongside narcotics-related offenses. Days later, Khalil Ogilvie was arrested, indicted by a Leon County grand jury, and charged with first-degree murder. He was held without bail. For MaKayla's family, the arrests brought no relief. They brought something far more complicated, because now they had to sit across a courtroom from the man responsible for ending their daughter's future and trust a system to deliver something that looked like justice. 2 years. That is how long MaKayla Bryant's family waited for a courtroom to give them answers. 2 years of hearings, continuances, case management meetings, and legal maneuvering. 2 years of showing up and sitting down and holding themselves together in a building that processes grief like paperwork. The trial of Khalil Ogilvie finally began in February 2024. Leon County, a Florida courtroom. Prosecutors entered with a first-degree murder charge, the most serious classification the state could pursue. Their argument was clear. Ogilvie had shown up at that parking lot with a weapon and a deliberate intention to rob 2 women. When that robbery met resistance, he pulled the trigger. That is not an accident. That is not a misunderstanding. That is murder. The state built its foundation methodically. Witness testimony placed Ogilvie at the scene. DNA analysis connected physical evidence. The sequence of events, the approach, the robbery attempt, the struggle, the shooting as the vehicle tried to flee, painted a portrait of a man who made a calculated, violent choice that ended an innocent life. Then Ogilvie took the stand himself. Defense attorneys had signaled early that their client would testify, and he did. Facing the jury directly, Ogilvie offered a version of events that inverted the prosecution's narrative entirely. He claimed MaKayla had threatened him with a firearm. He described the shooting not as an act of aggression, but as the product of a struggle that discharged accidentally. His position was that he never meant for anyone to die. The courtroom absorbed that testimony in silence. Prosecutors pushed back. The trajectory of the bullet, the position of the vehicle as it attempted to pull away, the nature of the wound itself, all of it pointed toward a man firing into a moving car rather than a weapon discharging in close quarters during a mutual confrontation. The state attorney's office had spent 2 years building toward this moment. They believed the evidence spoke clearly. The jury deliberated, and when they returned, they delivered a verdict that stunned many who had followed the case closely. Not guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of manslaughter. The distinction carries enormous legal weight. First-degree murder in Florida carries the possibility of life imprisonment. Manslaughter caps the sentencing range significantly lower. For MaKayla's supporters, her sorority sisters, her former teammates, the students and faculty at FAMU who had mourned her for 2 years, the word manslaughter landed like a second wound. State Attorney Jack Campbell addressed the outcome publicly. He stated that he held nothing but respect for the jury and their process, but he made one thing absolutely clear. Khalil Ogilvie, regardless of what the verdict said, was responsible for MaKayla Bryant's death. Those words offered little comfort to a family that had come to court seeking something heavier than manslaughter. Sentencing followed on April 15, 2024. Khalil Ogilvie stood before the judge and received 20 years in a Florida state prison. 20 years. For the people who loved MaKayla, the arithmetic felt impossible. A woman who graduated with honors, who led a cheerleading squad, who was pursuing a graduate degree in psychology, who showed up to work at a mall to fund her own future. Her life was valued at 20 years behind bars. And with good behavior and standard eligibility timelines, that number shrinks further. Precious Charlton, The woman who arranged the drug transaction that placed MaKayla in that parking lot never faced trial. Prosecutors dropped the murder charges against her in July 2022 after determining she had not acted in deliberate coordination with Ogilvie. Whatever accountability she carries now lives outside the reach of the criminal justice system entirely. That reality sits heavily on everyone who knew MaKayla Bryant. Because here is what the verdict cannot change. MaKayla was studying the criminal mind. She was preparing for a career built around understanding why human beings hurt each other. She wanted to spend her professional life making sense of the darkest corners of human behavior. And then, on an ordinary Wednesday evening, she became the victim of exactly the kind of senseless violence she had dedicated her education to understanding. The system processed her death, filed it, sentenced it, closed it. But the people who knew her, her family, her sisters, her teammates, everyone who watched her lead from the front and push through every obstacle with grace, they do not get to close anything. MaKayla Bryant was not just a case number. She was a bright light on a hilltop. And no verdict, no prison sentence, no legal document will ever say otherwise. Rest in power. MKIF, you made it this far. Hit the like button, share and subscribe to this channel if you find value to this story.